Welcome to Indie Conversations. This is the video series sponsored by CSAF, detailing some of the local producers and the films that they are making. Specifically today, I get the great opportunity to talk to Wendy Walker and C.H. Baradoy.
Correct.
About I practiced that multiple times. We're talking about your short film called A Friend Like Coyote.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, super happy to be here.
If you had to do your elevator pitch, what is A Friend Like Coyote about?
Basically, it's this story about a cowboy who's lost his way, and he has this yearning to search for gold. And Coyote the Trickster comes in and helps him find it. And along the way, there's fun, calamity, and perspective on life that the cowboys missed until the end of the journey.
And then I would add into that, it is the story of a man who has lost his way, who has forgotten who he was. And really, when you say man, to me, it's that we're talking about human beings. So whether it's this individual or other individuals, it kind of crosses over. This human being has lost his way and gets fixated and caught into that other world. Mm-hmm. And Coyote comes back into his life to teach him and to help him. But he doesn't get the lessons right away until it gets to a bit of a crescendo where he finally is able to recognize that it was never about that. It was always about the inner journey, and it's about that connection that he has also to the land.
What made you decide to use the well-known trickster god inside your film?
I think it was written, the original story.
It was. So this story was written by a good friend of mine, Shane Rixu. He won first place in the NYC Midnight Contest out of 7,500 contestants. This story was the winner. It was a story I felt really connected to. He wrote Coyote into it, but it does follow the cowboy. And it was a story I felt really connected to, and I wanted to produce it. I actually didn't plan on directing this film at all. I reached out to Wendy through a friend of mine who was Métis, and I said, listen, I connect to the cowboy in this piece of the story, but I don't have insight into this Indigenous piece, and it's kind of a cross-cultural story. Yeah. So I reached out to Wendy and said, listen, there's this character. I'm familiar with character from reading Thomas King, but I don't know that piece. I don't have an authority on that piece. The character was already there when we started to produce it. Yeah. And then Wendy came in and just filled the character out in just this beautiful, wonderful way.
Was this your first collaboration together?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know when you meet somebody and you just have that instant connection, I really felt like that. We just had that instant connection, and there was just almost like you were meeting an old friend to sit down and have this conversation. And so once Chris started to share about the story, I could, being a visual thinker, I could literally see it like my own movie. What it caused me to do was to be able to go and have conversations within my own community to ask this I thought it was a very important question, which is, what is the gender of the trickster?
Sure, yeah.
Right? And people are like, well, isn't it a male? And I said, well, how do you know? It's the trickster. And then somebody said, well, I don't think the trickster has a gender. I said, well, could the trickster be female? Absolutely, the trickster could be female. And as we kept talking and, started writing that script, I know one night I was having folks over for dinner, and I was stirring sauce of some kind and just had my phone in the other hand and just recorded some audio, and I sent it to Chris. And so from that place, I went from not only helping to develop the story around Coyote and really bring who was Coyote and the importance of that into the story, and also Cowboy's connection to all of that. I really felt strongly that I had to play Coyote.
Okay.
That I had this, because I could see her. I could, I grew up in my community around tricksters, so I absolutely know tricksters well, but I could just see her and feel her. And so we brought her into life, so Coyote is not male.
Because you're both credited as co-writers, co-directors, how do you feel like you balanced each other out? Like, what did you bring to the project versus what did you bring to the project?
That was really interesting and a wonderful experience to work together, actually. We had the story, and like I said, when we first collaborated together, I wanted to produce it, not to direct it.
Right.
Yeah.
And we were looking for a writer. So when I reached out to Wendy, we were writing it together. It was quite interesting because we had to ask this question: why is Coyote connected to Cowboy? And Wendy said right from the beginning, Coyote would have no interest in a Western cowboy. Like there's no reason for that.
No.
Unless there's some kind of heritage, then there's no connection. And I said, okay, well, we can make Cowboy an Indigenous person too. And then if that's the case, then I've got no right to be part of the story. Then this is a completely Indigenous story. But the story is also a perspective and a critique of the pursuit of Western wealth. Right. You know, the idea of pursuing gold versus pursuing the fulfillment of life. So I felt that there was a piece of my story there. And we talked a lot about how these two characters would come in contact with each other. Wendy said, you know, it could be through adoption. If he was originally adopted and forgot his ways, then there would be a connection there, because when you're adopted into the community, you're totally accepted. And that made a lot of sense, where both of us could come to it and offer different perspectives to tell a unified story. But one of the great things about working with Wendy was, you know, I had the opportunity to listen to everything that she had to say, but she also listened to me, and we've had conversations with each other that have, I think, enriched both our lives to understand different perspectives and tell a story that's kind of a cross-cultural story.
Yeah. I certainly don't have like probably the breadth of experience either of you have, but of the films that I've been a part of, I always feel that there's something that you learn. So I always like to know, what is it that you learned while making this film?
For myself, one of the things was having to jump into Cowboy's head, because I wrote a lot of the music for it.
Right.
So while we were filming, trying to put myself into that position, and which is something I'd never, as a songwriter, had never really done before. And so that was an interesting exercise to have that experience. To how do I create music and lyrics that help tell Cowboy's story without taking away from any of Cowboy, and really kind of keeping it to him. So that was a great experience. I'm so grateful for that opportunity, and also the opportunity to not only meet Chris, but to work with Chris, and, you know, to get to know his family, and taking what started off as a working relationship to now what I would call a really good friendship. Yeah.
I think I learned how to tell a story, and how to tell a story is by listening first. And the conversations that I've had with Wendy, to look for the authenticity in what you have. And, you know, we filmed this in a very guerrilla style.
We did.
Where, you know, film where you can with what you have, and use the tools at your disposal. And I think we came up with something that's like a really beautiful film portrayal of an authentic idea.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I've learned is, if you continue with authenticity, you're going to find something that can be beautiful. And I think there's so many ways to do that. And Wendy and I have really connected and built that relationship, and tried to share that through the film.
Is this your first chance to see it with an audience?
Yes. We did a cast and crew screening, just to bring the people who worked in it together. But this will be the first time we get to see people react to it.
Yeah. Who haven't seen it.
Yeah. Strangers and people we're not connected to, which will be...
Yeah. Well, because, you know, like when your friends, you know, are, and your cat and the cast is there. And I have to say that we worked with incredible people on this project. Jamie, who happens to be, I always describe Jamie, who was our cameraman and editor and / extraordinaire human being on set, as the happiest person on the face of this earth. I mean, it didn't matter after how many hours of shooting, or, gee, we had to reshoot the film or reshoot that particular scene. Jamie always had approached the work with just like genuineness and happiness, and always with a smile on his face. We had great makeup folks. We had really good actors who came out to support the project, who they didn't do it for the millions of dollars they were paid. Some of it was just lunch, but it was...
Specifically on the actors part, I mean, you mentioned about how you knew you had to step into the Trickster role.
Yes.
How did you find your Cowboy?
So I'd worked with Cliff Lickness, who's a great actor. He's been in a lot of productions that come through Calgary. Him, Jamie, and I worked on a short previously, Hunger. I knew him from there and had experience with his acting, and like just really great actor. And I was like, you know, I need to use this actor again. Like he's talented and unrecognized in Calgary. We need to get him out there so people can see his talent. And when the story came across my plate, I automatically knew he would be a good Cowboy. So I was just fortunate to already have that existing relationship.
As a bit of a wrap up here, this may be the hardest question then. I've been asking everyone, what is the last great film you've seen?
The one I recently watched was a 1980s film, The Vanishing.
Oh, okay.
I went back and watched that recently, and it was quite terrifying.
That's good.
Love film. But if I step back and kind of look at a film as to how a non-Indigenous person can tell a story that some people think is an Indigenous story, but it really, again, happens to be about Indigenous people, but it really highlights the greed of people, and that would be Killers of the Flower Moon.
Right.
And when I was watching interviews with them, there was the chief of the Osage was with them, and actually turned to Robert De Niro and said, "I think you speak better Osage, right, than some of my own people." And so, just the depth of work that they did as a group coming together to connect with the Osage people to help tell that story, and not to tell the story from the Osage perspective, because they clearly did not do that, but they were highlighting. Right. So they just happened to be the central characters. So I truly loved how it was filmed. I loved how, I just loved how the actors really took to the culture of that particular community, and to the point where I think Robert De Niro's wife said, he talks in his sleep, I guess, but he was talking in Osage.
Really?
Right. Yeah. So, so that would be just when you take on and you venture into another community. And then just that respect that was shown for that community to help bring about and tell that story. Because many people did not know that this was an actual story that happened in history. Mm-hmm. So I love the historical piece as well.
Well, again, if people want to check out your film, A Friend Like Coyote, it is going to be screening at the Alberta Spotlight Shorts Package at the Calgary International Film Festival here this year. Well, people can check it out there.
Yeah.
And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and talk with me here today.
Thanks, Cal, for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Yeah. Have a great day. Take care, everybody.